Welcome to the HLTH podcast, a panel discussion on trends and innovations in health and self-care. My name is Christophe Jauquet. I'm the author of the HLTH books and a professional keynote speaker on health, business, and technology. Every week, I discuss with a panel of experts the positive changes that are shaping our health and happiness. And for this discussion, we have one of your beloved experts in the panel. From Scotland, but living near Brighton, medical expert in digital innovation, Dr. Keith Grimes.
Fit like everybody.
But as you might hear again in the background, we're still at HLTH Europe, which means that we had the opportunity to invite some very special guests again. And for this episode, we have Maxine Mackintosh, an AI fairness health expert. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we also have Peter Rescala, who is a medfluencer and better known as Dr. Disney.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk.
Well, happy to have you, but let's just start with this Disney thing. I mean, we need to get it out of the way because honestly, we've never met. It was you, Keith, who introduced us, and yeah.
Why Dr. Disney?
What is it?
We were just talking also. So I started when I wasn't a doctor yet. I was a medical student. And in America, things are very litigious. So I wanted to call myself something that would be cool, but also allow me to let people know that I'm a doctor. So I called myself Dr. Disney so that I can say, I'm not claiming I'm a doctor yet because I'm only in training, but I know Disney enough. And so I know I'm Dr. Disney. But then when I got my MD, I claimed that I'm Dr. Disney, and I do both. So I'm a pediatrician by training, just to explain what it means. Pediatrician, and I create health education videos for parents and kids to watch online. Free health education.
And is Disney okay with that?
So Disney knows that I exist. We've talked, and it's been a nice connection.
Because I worked with Disney in the past, and I have to say, compared to pharma, they are way more regulated.
Yeah, they are regulated. There is another Dr. Disney I found out who exists, but I'm the actual Dr. Disney.
Yeah, but you are the original and best, of course.
Right.
Maxine, welcome. Tell me about yourself.
This conversation is making me think back in the early days of the internet, when you Googled Maxine Mackintosh, what you got was a woman called Maxine who liked to strip off and be naked but wear Mackintosh coats.
Oh my!
So that used to be the top person when you used to Google my name.
It's not you.
No, it's not me. It's not me. It's just
and Dr. Disney reminded you of that.
Yeah, and so I don't have any created identities, but it did make me think about my alter ego in the early days of the internet. A bit about me that's relevant. So my interest is at the intersection of fairness, equity, data and AI, and health and genomics. So I kind of like doing that from a few different angles. And so one is that I do academic research at the Alan Turing Institute, again on sort of AI fairness. The second is I'm the co-founder and co-director of a community called One Health Tech, which is all around how we can improve the diversity and inclusion in health innovation. We're a community of about 15,000 people distributed across the world.
Wow.
We run fellowship programs, hubs, campaigns, specialist networks, all with the view of creating a more inclusive health innovation ecosystem. And then recently I was running a national program in the UK on improving the diversity of the ancestral genetic data we have. So working with the UK government on rebalancing the diversity of our genomics, which has been a very interesting experience.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Seems like you'll be working a lot of hours if you can do all of that too.
I guess everyone on probably self-selecting on these podcasts have like a few different hats, which is what makes it exciting and different.
Yeah, and definitely on topics, I mean, like AI and genomics, that's probably the most important thing for the future of health anyway, if you ask me, right?
Absolutely. Having said that, I think genomics and AI have really good PR.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought AI was the worst at overselling itself in terms of its promise. But having spent 3 years now in the world of genomics, I think genomics might be beating AI on what they're promising they can really do. So I think I've become more skeptical about genomics the more time I've spent in it. So that's actually why I've come back to the world of AI.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite the team up, isn't it, with all this data and all the promise that people don't fight very hard to try and disabuse people of. Yeah, it's really good to have you in that sort of position to understand it and be in a position to be able to communicate it. And, you know, asking you both to come on was intentional because it's really important to talk about diversity of input from people in the background for the genetic databases that we use to make sure that everyone benefits from what benefits there might be from genetics and so on. But then also for yourself, Peter, about how there's a different way of practicing medicine, of providing care.
Right.
We don't need to plow one particular track on this. So to have seen the work that you do and met you at the US Health and hear you speaking here, having your opinions and sort of viewpoints on this is really helpful.
So Health.
Yeah.
Health Europe.
Health Europe.
How's it going? How do you like it?
Well, I want to start with a question. Has anyone been to the Health America? Yeah, Keith.
Keith puts his hand up.
Yeah. So I went to the Health Europe in Las Vegas in October, and that's where Keith and I met. And it was a fantastic opportunity. I felt like everything that I've done in life led to that moment, but all of my network increased infinitely just by being at the health conference. And what was really cool about that conference is everyone from every area of health was there, including like pharmaceutical insurance companies and then the doctors. When people found out I was a doctor, I felt like I was valued in like new sites. Like, oh, you are not a surgeon, not a cardiologist. You're a pediatrician who came out to this conference. And I was like, yes. And so I create social content, and then they invited me to come to Health Europe to speak on a panel here. And so we just did a panel yesterday called Like and Prescribe about the intersection of healthcare and social media, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it was a really cool time because a lot of people who came up after were asking questions about how do I meet and target a 65-year-old man in America who has heart disease? Where do I go? And I had to think about how I use social media and what I've learned as a creator to be able to, help people and position them the right way. Health Europe is amazing. It's the first one that you guys are doing. It's very far. It's a long plane ride. But I think it compares to Health America very nicely. And there's a lot of incredibly inspiring people. So it's just a beautiful experience.
You, Maxine?
So significantly less far. It's only a 4-hour train. So it's very convenient from the UK. So I had sort of extricated myself from the world of health tech for a few years. I think I became a bit jaded with hi, I'm going to introduce you to my platform that's going to democratize data to revolutionize patient experiences and empower them to do blah, 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 blah. And not to say that all these entrepreneurs don't have amazing stories to tell, but for some reason, there's this homogeneity of the way that people talk about
their keywords.
Oh, man.
The buzzwords are really funny.
And it just got I just got a bit jaded. So I thought, there's nothing inherently wrong with the area. It's full of amazing people doing amazing things. I'm the problem. So I took a bit of time out, and I've come back, and it's really refreshing. I find there's a kind of intersection, and someone said this to me yesterday, that lots of these events have the same people saying the same things, and this event has different people saying different things. So I'm really, really enjoying that, and I'm particularly enjoying the fact that people are saying some things that are not necessarily popular, or a bit controversial, or a bit spicy.
Right. I love spicy.
Brilliant.
So equity and women's health and those sorts of issues are a big theme at Health. And people are talking about some quite divisive topics. And I do find that there tends to be a bit of a relationship between seniority and how boring you are. In the sense of if you're really senior, you have to be really careful about what you say because people listen and you've got comms team sitting behind you. Again, no reflection on the people, but they have to be a bit guarded. And I do think people have been a bit more relaxed in this environment, which means actually these amazing, really senior experts have spoken a little bit more from the heart or from the brain or from the body. And as a result, that's been really nice to actually really hear what people think.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear because it wasn't exactly my feel when I went to the panels. I was like, come on, this could be a little bit more edgy or get some in the more controversial stuff. So it's interesting to hear that you feel that way. Was there any session in particular that you went to that you say, this was really nice, this is something that I take away, or?
So yeah, that's an important distinction actually. So it's been a bit hit and miss in terms of the number of attendees at different sessions, and the sessions that I think should have been better attended ended up having quite interesting closed group discussions. So because actually the audience members were a handful, the panel and the audience kind of became one, and then there was like a room discussion. So those are the environments I'm really talking about. Maybe the ones that were slightly bigger panels probably did remain a bit more guarded. So yesterday, for example, I was part of a session on Techquity, which is a new smorgasbord of words that I hadn't come across, but obviously the intersection of tech and equity. And again, not super well attended, but as a result, there was a singular conversation between the audience and the panelists, and just people, spoke really, really impassionately about some really sensitive areas, and people built on it, and it was a really cumulative, collaborative conversation. So yeah, that's probably the one that I would say was fantastic.
Yeah, I've gone to some of the bigger panels as opposed to the smaller ones because generative AI is my passion areas, and that's the sort of wunderkind of it all right now, and so they get bumped up the schedule. But I think you're right. When you've got the really, really big stage, you get these quite anodyne statements coming back out, and you're staring at them and saying, come on, let's have some disagreement. Let's hear something different there as well, because I don't want to hear the same words trotted out and again and again. However, afterwards when you've been able to catch up about them and give them a little poke and say, is this entirely correct? They've been slightly less guarded. And I think
you mean one-on-one?
Yeah, one-on-one or in small groups or after hours when you go to some of the events, it's worked well. And I think, health also offers that as well. And that's been quite good. But I feel upset that I've missed some of these smaller ones. I should really be thinking a bit more broadly.
Yeah, maybe go to the stuff that looks unpopular.
Yeah.
But so we have a new buzzword coming up, which is equity, probably.
Probably, yeah.
Peter,
Yeah.
any session in particular you liked or that you take away?
Well, the one I just came from was fascinating. They were talking about the advancements in health. I feel like that's the whole conference, but yeah, I know. Wow, what did they talk about? But it was more from a medical perspective. And so I was taking away from it that they were talking about how in 1910, we came out with the pap smear, which we used for screening for women's health, but it wasn't implemented until the 1950s and what caused that delay. And then they had the mammogram in 1920, but it wasn't covered by insurance until the 1980s and what caused that delay. And then the PSA, which helps screen for prostate cancer, although it's questionable how sensitive it actually is, but that came out and was accepted within 20 years. And once I heard that, I was like, because it's men, because men are the driving force for a lot of these things. But then the question that I started thinking of is, what are we doing now that is hindering the next generation? And there was another panel previously, and I believe this as a trainee who went through the whole system, that medical education really needs to update. Medical education is behind because we've not changed the framework. We are not training doctors to be able to be better communicators, better public speakers, using tech. Like, we still use stethoscopes, which is just a piece of plastic and a tube. And there are ultrasounds. You can have a pocket ultrasound that will help you see inside your patient's body. We still press on the abdomen with our hands to do an abdominal exam, and we know that that's not the most sensitive way to do it, but we don't change the framework. And I sit there thinking, yes, but the medical community, the teachers at least, the educators, they're not here. They're not at this conference. At least I don't know if they are. So how do we mobilize them? Because everyone here seems to be on the same page. But if we're not going to change how doctors are trained, then we're just going to stay in this cycle.
Yeah, I believe passionately about having to change the undergraduate curriculum. If I just focus on one particular area, because you're right. I mean, medicine as it is practiced now is different, let alone how it's going to become. And there's large chunks of the work that people want to, or the things they need to study with regards to digital health, with regards to genomics, with regards to artificial intelligence, that are essentially not taught. Or if they are taught at medical school, they're taught as an optional extra.
Right.
They're outside. And what does that do? Well, it means that not everyone gets these baseline training, number one. And then number two, they're taught that this is outside medicine. And so is it any surprise that when they come to practice, they think, well, this is what I want to do. I'm going to have to go outside medicine to do it. The big difficulty I see when I talk to people setting up curriculums about making the changes, something has to give, something has to make way for this. You can't
keep adding,
cranking it up. And the question is, what should you do? I vote biochemistry, but but there are some other things in there. Sorry to all the biochemists. But something, exactly. Everyone votes for that.
Well, I would add also that the thing that could give is pre-med training. At least in America, you do like your college experience and you have pre-med for 4 years. But it's so bizarre that doesn't count as your major, which is like your main study. You have to graduate with your major. So you have to do all these extra pre-med classes, and it's so intensive, like 2 semesters of chemistry and then orgo and physics. And why do we need all that? Like, I've not used any of this stuff as a physician. Like, I know that sodium chloride's in the body, and yes, some of it's important, but 2 semesters maximum, you just like craft it for the doctors instead of just drilling all this hard science. I had no anatomy and physiology class as a pre-med trainee. And I started my medical training and had 4 hours of nutrition training. Everything else is just like sick body, push a pill, sick body, push a pill. And then they say, but the first thing is always lifestyle modification. But then after that, you push this pill for this one. And it's like, what lifestyle modification? Like, no one actually taught me. I had to do my own research to know what a healthy diet looks like, what healthy exercise looks like. And that's all, again, outside of medicine. And so you have to pursue it on your own. And to talk about it in the patient room is you're being counter to our dogma.
I think the whole lifestyle medicine thing, there's a lot of curriculum and things happening, and you can follow a lot of courses, I believe, but it's still outside of the official road, and you need to choose for it yourself, right? Social media, is it part of the curriculum? Should it be? We talked about personal branding on the pod already in healthcare, and social media is a big part of that. How would you see that?
Social media is a wonderful tool. I see it as a tool. So it is something that will not go away anytime soon. We have to use it wisely. That being said, there are good and bad things with social media. The good is that you can reach anyone in their pocket and you can sort of eliminate all the barriers for tequity. I love that term. And you can utilize it because most people, I don't want to make any statements that are unfair, but most people have smartphones. And so they're online trying to find information. So you can meet them where they're at. In America, that's cool because anyone can learn. But the bad side is that you can market pharmaceutical drugs to the patient, the consumer, immediately. Versus here, it sounds like the things are more regulated in Europe, which allows for more protection for the consumer when it comes to social media use. It's a training that I've done on my own. I am an actor by training as well. So I know how to connect with people. And
Of course you are.
so my musical theater background teaches me how to connect with people, make eye contact. And actually, interestingly, in medical school during training, biochemistry was my hardest class, and I struggled very much in class. And I talked to my friends. I was like, guys, this is so intense. How are you all doing this? I said, this is hard. Peter, you know what's really hard? The patient-centered medicine class. And I said, the class where we talk to patients, like our job? And they said, yeah, no one taught us how to do that. And I realized that you're just throwing people in who've been doing grueling science work for so long and then just expecting them to know how to communicate. And they don't know how to do that. So I do think it's a responsibility on medical education to train people to communicate, to be better listeners, because communication, everything we're doing right now, for everyone who's listening, communication is 55% body language, 38% vocal inflection, and only 7% content. But doctors are trained on the content, which is the lowest yield. And you guys are listening to us on a podcast.
So you're missing out.
You're missing on all of our body language right now.
62%. I can't do the math, whatever.
Exactly. But they're not trained in that. And I think we're doing the whole industry. I mean, ourselves a disservice because we're all patients as well.
Go ahead, Maxine.
Yeah, I was actually going to segue that to probably my biggest takeaway from the health event that's to do with medical education. So one of the things that I think is fantastic about this event is that there's really focused pockets on Black in health, women in health, LGBTQI in health. And it's really very helpful, I think, to have these spotlights on these communities or these causes. And I had a really striking conversation yesterday, which again is nice because it was quite spicy. But it was basically saying that we were talking about cultural competence in care and saying actually that so many, particularly Black women, we talk about Black women mortality rates. So in the UK, women are, until recently it was 5 times, now it's 4 times more likely to die from childbirth complications than white women. So that's just a kind of headline stat that we have. Similar statistics across most of Europe and also the US. And her answer was very much that we really need to be training many more Black doulas. And I don't disagree with that, but I also kind of posited to her saying, well, do we need fat doctors for fat patients, Jewish doctors for Jewish patients, Black doctors for Black patients? Where does that stop? And really the answer should be, we should be training doctors to be much more culturally aware, much more culturally sensitive. And saying, that's where we get to the position where male gynecologists now are unable to deliver care because they always have to be chaperoned. And so where does this stop? And so on one hand, I think it's very helpful to be able to create these kind of silos of communities because it creates a spotlight, it creates safe spaces, it creates an ability to have a conversation with a really focused group. But given the centricity of some of the identity and culture features at health, I guess it's very important to not therefore forget that this has to integrate into mainstream medicine. And really the answer has to be teach all clinicians as much as possible to be more culturally aware, to communicate more effectively, to be more aware of cultural differences, religious backgrounds, gender identities, etc. So I guess that was, again, an interesting and quite controversial discussion to be had.
I agree, because it's funny, I saw that and I saw these different areas and they were saying, but where's the neurodiversity section? They've missed my tribe here. Where are they? What's going on? And
I feel like it's the whole conference.
except we're all spicy.
Yeah.
It is. Finding that balance is interesting. I got caught up in some discussions on social media recently, specifically about male gynecologists or male obstetricians in the same way. And there were some groups were saying, absolutely not. Why are they doing this? That was the bit that was hard. Why do they choose to do this particular area?
What do you mean? Why do they have chaperones?
Why would a man want to do gynecology? There was this, and I was, it's an interesting area of medicine. Some people find that's a really great area to practice in. But then at the same time, I understand from the perspective of some of the patients that they may have a preference and so on. So it's about supporting people's ability to be able to help each other where they can, and there's some tolerance about how you shift around. But I agree with you about ultimately being understanding and flexible to the needs of the people that you're working with and tolerant of those differences. Again, very basic things is the way forward, and inch by inch we make it forward, hopefully.
So maybe a final question for both of you, for all three maybe. So we talked about a lot of stuff that wasn't, we talked about what's missing in the curriculum, but what's missing on health? I mean, if you could add like one thing, there's already a lot going on. It's 4 or 5 sessions at the same time, sometimes even more. But if you would add like one maybe topic, is there something that you think that maybe next year we should focus on that as well? Peter?
I think you should invite medical schools. I think they need to be a part of this conversation. They need to see where all of healthcare is going and realize that they're behind. They are the reason that healthcare is at an impasse. Because if you trained your doctors to acknowledge all of this stuff that's happening, all the cultural competency, the technology, and how all of society is moving forward, then again, there's two parts of society that I think are really resistant to change. And it came up in one of the panels. And I wonder, why is medicine so resistant to change? I think it's because, one, it's healthcare, so people are a bit more concerned about making anything and any shifts. But then also because academia is just, someone called it the academic bloat. It's kind of just like everyone's just around and sitting around and all this philosophical and sitting in committees and things don't really happen. But if they come here and they have to be mobilizers like everyone else, then they're going to be like, oh, shoot, I need to equip all of at least sponsor some of my students to come here. And then it starts like a ripple effect. So I think the education side needs to be involved as an important key player in this whole discussion.
Am I allowed to swear? Ideally not.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Fine. So I think that being places like this is very inspiring. People have lots of examples of how things have gone really well. And, you walk away thinking, wow, it's really possible. And all of us in our day jobs also find lots of things really hard, and we've made really big mistakes. And I've helped organize and be part of a few things, one of them called the Festival of Fuck-Ups, and where people stood up and said, I tried this thing. This is what we did. It was a disaster. And then the whole point is you have to cheer at the end, because in reality, we all make these mistakes. But it was A, very cathartic, but 2, I learned so much from all these attempts that had failed that you never hear about because they're failed attempts. So I would love a fuck-up stage.
Yeah, and it's actually, I heard it in quite some startups having it, not specifically in the healthcare, but in general. And they have fuck-up Fridays where, no kidding. And so what they do is every Friday, they talk about something that disastrously went wrong. So that others can learn from it. It's also, I think, and that's why I really like that idea, is that obviously it's dangerous to fail in health, but we're so risk averse that maybe we should be failing a little bit more. Be careful where you fail and what domain you fail.
Yeah, because we call it morbidity mortality conference. It's like when something happens, you all come together and you're like, why did it happen? How do we fix it? So we also have the same, we don't call it the same thing, but
it is actually one of the people that was meant to come and speak but didn't speak was my former boss, Ali Parsa. And part of the reason he was going to be coming here and talking about Babylon was about the lessons learned, something that people here are desperate to hear for all the right reasons here, like what things went well, what things didn't go well. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to come along. But then since then, I work there. People are saying, well, what happened in that? So people have a real desire to understand, not from a kind of spectator gore situation, but like, I'm working in this space. I don't want to make the same mistake. How can I learn? And I think there's a duty for people who work in this space where things don't work quite the way they should to be able to share that. But you have to support them in doing so. It has to be a supportive thing.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that health has done quite well is has invested quite a lot in the social stuff. The food is put on. There's lots of different parallel competing, often drinks parties. But what that does is it creates an environment where people are connecting more than your average conference, in my opinion, and therefore people trust one another more, and therefore there's a bit more psychological safety than other conferences. And so I think given that that's a bit of the foundation, then I think it would be a ripe, fertile ground upon which to have something like a Fuck Up Friday.
And one other thing I wish they had is a glossary for all these terms. Like if anyone who's new, like API and all this stuff that like most people don't know. I think they kind of assume that people know these big terms. And then also like a bingo card for all the buzzwords.
Yeah.
Propelling healthcare and
bingo card.
A bingo card. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
I would love that.
And just in terms of things that are missing here, earlier on, we were talking about quotes before, and I was listening to yet another generative AI talk. And David Roof from Microsoft was there, and they were celebrating, aggregating data and the power of AI. And one of the lines that was used, which was quite good, was, if AI is the vehicle, data is the fuel. And that got me thinking. I said, yes, but AI and data require huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of water, have a huge environmental impact. Not all fuel is the same. And the thing that is missing here is any discussion about sustainability. And I think that is a wee bit of a miss. I'd really like to have seen more made of that, and not separately in some partially attended section of the conference, but actually woven through this, because the health of the environments in which we live directly impacts on the health of the humans within it. And I think that was a wee bit of a miss.
Love that.
Yeah, wonderful. With these words, I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you for that, Keith. Thank you, Maxine, and thank you, Dr. Disney. I have to say it again. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, of course. You can also visit healthenthusiasm.com to discover the other episodes, subscribe to the newsletter, and learn more about our panelists. For now, I'd like to thank our panelists for their health enthusiasm. Thank you, Dr. Keith Grimes. Thank you, Dr. Disney Peter Rescala, and thank you, Dr. Maxine Mackintosh.
Thank you.
Well, this is it. My name is Christophe. We are the Health Enthusiasm panel, and we'd love to see you again next week for some more health enthusiasm. Ciao.